So this episode, I want to talk about faith. And I want to talk about faith because faith is something that is always being tested, especially for us people who are striving for something, the people who feel like they know what their purpose is in life, or even the people who don't know what their purpose is. Their faith is especially tested because you're always questioning, are you doing what you're supposed to do? Are you wasting your time? Are you surrounded around the people you're supposed to be surrounded by? Am I ever going to make it? Am I ever going to be happy? Am I ever going to get that promotion? Am I ever going to get married? Is this friendship with this person ever going to turn into the dream, ideal relationship that I know that it could be? Faith is always being tested. Faith is always, oh wow, I just seen a bird dive into the water. That shit was crazy. Damn. Hey, New York City ain't for play, y'all. Fuck what you heard. But yeah, man, faith is always being tested. There's always some struggle in the universe that's coming to oppose you being in motion. You just trying to mind your business. You just trying to be happy. You just trying to show up to work on time, pay your bills, pay your tithes, pay your rent, hang out with your shorty, kick it with your friends. But for some reason, the universe is always finding a way to come along and test your faith. And you know, as a person who is a believer in God, as a person who is used to his faith being tested, because that just comes with the territory when you're a believer in God or when you're a spiritual person. But as a spiritual person, I gotta tell you, I'm tired of my faith being tested. Like sometimes I just be wanting to look up to the sky and be like, God, when you gonna stop with the games? When you gonna stop with the games? Because I passed the last test that you put me through. I passed the other test that you put me through. All of these things that felt like it was so difficult at the time that you couldn't make it through, I survived it all. And at some point you just felt like, man, I need a break. I need a break, God. I feel like I done paid all my dues. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I don't need to be a soldier no more. I need to get promoted to being a sergeant or lieutenant at this point because I feel like I did what you asked me to do. When you are an entrepreneur or you're someone who is striving for their purpose, whatever that may be, maybe your purpose is being a better brother to your sister. Maybe it's being a better son to your father, or maybe you're a father trying to be better to your kids. Whatever it is, everybody has a purpose here on earth. Some of us know what it is, and some of us are still searching for it. And that's exactly what I want to talk about this episode. I want to talk about faith. When I was in Dallas a couple weeks ago, me and my mom was having a conversation about COVID. And we were having a conversation about how ever since the vaccines were rolled out and people were essentially forced to take them, we're hearing these things about people having heart problems and all of these medical issues that are rising out of nowhere, right? From seemingly healthy people who had no prior medical history or no prior serious diseases or illnesses, anything like that, right? And we were talking about how we believe, we watch a lot of YouTube, watch a lot of Instagram, and a lot of voices of the new era that speak up against COVID vaccine and speak up against really just offering a different perspective. A lot of people have shared that a lot of these things are happening because of the vaccine. And me and my mom were talking about how it's crazy how so many people got the vaccine because their job pressured them, or so many people got the vaccine because their family peer pressured them, made them feel like an outsider, made them feel like they weren't being conscientious of society or were not playing their part or being selfish because maybe they had second thoughts on getting it or maybe they had doubts about whether it was safe or not. And during that time when COVID was really in the thick of it, nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew if you were gonna see your family members, if you were even gonna be alive, because it was just this brand new thing that everybody was introduced to. And at that time, everybody's faith was tested. And everybody's faith was especially tested when it came to your job. Because a lot of people's jobs at that time were threatening people, saying that if you didn't get the vaccine, you were going to lose your job. And you know, there's a lot of people in the world that like to talk about how strong they are. It's a lot of people in the world who want to talk about how, you know, they would never fold under peer pressure, or how nobody could convince them or manipulate them to do something that they don't want to do. But as soon as the government or the jobs and the companies that we work for started talking about potentially taking away your finances, that's when the pressure really got high. And I don't say that with malice or to be patronizing or condescending to the people who took the vaccine to keep the security of their job. I just say it as an observation that a lot of people really started to have those conversations with their friends and their family when they went back home. And at one point they were saying they wasn't gonna get the vaccine, and then as soon as it seemed like they may or may not lose their job, they started singing a different note. And I bring that up because that is a great example of faith being tested. And the reason why this is so interesting to me is because when you think about who God is, right? Doesn't matter what your religion is, doesn't matter what your spiritual practices are. If you acknowledge the presence of God, then you know that God is the Almighty, the most powerful, the unbeatable, never took a loss. God is everything. God is the ultimate winner. God is the ultimate warrior, the ultimate winner, the ultimate champion, the ultimate conqueror. And regardless of your spiritual background, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." And when you think about that Bible verse, somebody let me know in the comments where in the Bible that scripture actually belongs, that verse belongs. But when you think about that, you have to ask yourself, do you believe it? Do you believe that when God says, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper," is that something that you're willing to put your life on the line to test and see? In no way am I making a space, and in no way am I making space for judgment or making space for scrutinizing people for the decisions that they made for themselves or their families. I'm not in position to do so, and I would never do that because this is not a game. But I raised the question to highlight, if you really believe that if God is for you, then no enemy can be against you, then why would you feel the pressure to do something that the enemy or the people or society is telling you to do? If you truly believe that, no matter what your religion is, no matter what your spiritual background is, then you would understand that there's nothing that the world, your job, the companies that you work for, society can say to you to truly harm you, because in the back of your mind and your spiritual belief, you know that God has your best interest in mind and God won't allow anything to happen to you, even if it gets crazy, even if it gets scary, even if it gets spooky to the point where, okay, they were serious about not paying us anymore and we are on our last check. Does your faith run so deeply that you are willing to follow God all the way down to the last dollar, all the way down to the last cent, all the way down to the last can of corn, the last can of Vienna sausages, whatever it is? Like, if it just really got that ugly, does your faith run deep enough that you're willing to follow God all the way to the end of it? Because when you're on this journey of life and you have a purpose and you feel like you're called to do something, your faith is going to be tested. COVID is one example of many examples that will continue to happen down the lifeline of your existence while you're here. And it's going to look different every single time. Your faith being tested, whatever that thing is that's coming to test you, it is the exact same thing in a different form, in a different shape every single time. And as me and my mom was talking about this, and we were just talking about all of the people who, had great intentions because they didn't want to see their family starve in this time where the world was very confusing and it was scary. You're hearing about bodies dropping and you're hearing about people being fine one day and then disappearing the next. Is your faith strong enough to trust your instincts, even if that might mean that you're going to have to walk the road less traveled? Because when your faith is challenged, sometimes people that love you, people that live with you, not going to understand you. They're not going to understand your walk. They're going to look at you like you're wearing a different jersey and you drafted to a different team now. They're going to look at you like you're a traitor, like you're an enemy. And you have to understand that when that moment happens, you have to extend even them grace. Even though they don't have the strength to extend you grace, the grace that you deserve based off of who you are and who you've always been to those people and the history that you have amongst one another. You have to extend grace to those people because you need to be the stronger person in that moment and understand that their faith is being tested right now and, they're not sure where they stand with things. And that's not a moment to judge them for not being as secure in their faith, but it is a moment for you to be waking up and put on notice. Like, that's a moment for you to realize, like, okay, let me get sharp real quick. Let me tighten up because I can't afford to be too loose out here, because if I do, then I might get unintentionally manipulated and doing something that I don't want to do. So as me and my mom was talking, I said something that happens every single time your faith is tested. And when I said it, she made like the stank face, like I said, like a fire ass bar or something like that. And she immediately pointed to me and was like, you need to write that down because that's going to be your next podcast. And so I did. And what I said is that whenever your faith is tested, three things happen, and it always happens no matter what the situation is, no matter how differently the thing that's coming to test your faith looks, because it's always the same person. Whatever that comes to test your faith is the same person with a different mask. It's the same person in a different body, showing up in a different form every single time. And three things happen no matter what it is that's coming to test your faith. These three things always come up and show up in some type of sequence, in some kind of way. Number one, you always gonna feel like your back is up against the wall. Number two, the answer is never clear to you in that moment. You're confused. And three, you always feel like you're running out of time. These are three things that always happen when your faith. These are three things that always happen when your faith is being tested. You always feel like your back is up against the wall. You always feel like the answer is not clear. And you feel like you're always running out of time. And the interesting thing about these three things that always happen is, if you look at your life and you look at all of the challenges that you've went through, all of the things that have come against you that had you feeling like, man, I don't know how we gonna survive this one. I don't know how we gonna pay this one off. I don't know how we gonna make time to be in two places at one time. All of these things that came against you and you didn't know how you was gonna handle it. You survived it all. If you living today, and if you watching this today, if you're listening to this today, I want you to take a second and think about all of the things that you felt like was potentially could take you out, maybe emotionally or quite literally physically. It didn't happen. Oh, it's a bee flying. You know I don't be fucking with no bees. None of it worked. You still haven't died. You still putting your best foot forward, and you still at it every single day, still waking up, still breathing, still blinking. So when your faith is tested, it's so easy to forget that everything that's coming to test your faith again already came to test your faith before. But when we get these new challenges, it's like we don't recognize the enemy the same anymore. Even though the enemy is coming in a new face, but coming with the same tactics, the same characteristics, the same moves, the same cheat codes, the same thing every single time. It never changes, but it's like we can't recognize it because it looks different, or because we look different, because we're in a different space in our life. Because the last time it happened, you was in the Honda and the oil was leaking everywhere, and you always had to get things fixed on it, and you was in a different phase of your life. Now you in New York City, and you got the skyline behind you and the sun setting, and now things are coming to test your faith, and you feel like you don't recognize it because you're not in the same environment. Because the last time your faith was tested, you was in Texas. Now your faith is tested, and you're in New York City. And I'm saying this metaphorically speaking, like you might have been in that one apartment, and now you're in the house, or you in the better apartment, and now your faith is being tested again. You was working at McDonald's, now you're working at the call center. You was working at the call center, now you're working at the high rise overlooking the city, and now your faith is being tested. You was with Jerome, now you're with Marcus, and now your faith is being tested. You was working on your EP, now you're working on the album, and now your faith is being tested. But it looks the same every single time. It never changes. You feel like your back is up against the wall. You feel like the answers are not clear. And you feel like you're running out of time. And every single time those three things come to get you, every single time those three things come back to target you, I want you to remember the last time those three things tried to come and target you and it didn't work. I want you to remember the last time those three things came to disturb your peace, to move you from your center, and you survived. You didn't die, you're still here. You're still here to tell the story. It's important that you remember those things because the enemy wants you to forget. Because if the enemy, whoever you think the enemy is, whether you believe in the devil, whether you believe in evil forces at work, whatever you think that is, maybe it's just your manager, because Lord knows them niggas be evil sometimes. But whatever you think the enemy is, it is the enemy's number one goal. It is the enemy's number one focus to make you forget what he looks like, because he wants you to think that you're facing this for the first time again. He wants you to think that this is the first time you've ever dealt with this so you can feel confused, so you can feel alone, so you can feel like your back is up against the wall, so you can feel like you've never dealt with this before. He doesn't want you to remember, because if you remember, then you realize that just like last time, he can't beat you. If you can remember that the enemy uses the same tricks and the same moves every single time, you can remember that you prepare for this. Because you can remember what happened the last time that you tried to deal with this situation, and then you can remember what you did to beat it. And if you can remember what you did to beat it, you can remember what you can do to beat this one. Yeah, it might look a little different. Yeah, the enemy might be a little smoother, a little slicker, because last time you whooped his ass, he went back to the gym and he went and got some new tricks. A nigga went and learned how to do Taebo, and he was learning jujitsu and all type of enemy type shit. You know what I mean? He got ready for you. But you're ready too, because this whole time you ain't just been on the couch. You ain't just been slacking. You ain't just been lazy. You've been working. And while you've been working, you've been picking up these victories, and you've been taking L's, but you've been learning. That's the thing about L's. Like when they say it's not a loss, it's a lesson. You've been taking lessons. You've been taking lessons, and all the lessons have prepared you for this time that the enemy has come back to test you again. And what I want you to do is to remember how you won the last time. What I want you to do is remember that the enemy tried to isolate you and make you feel like you were alone when you really wasn't. Because every time your faith is tested, eventually the test stops, and then you come out and then you see the sky. Now you see the sunshine. Now you see the sun coming through the clouds, and there's a period where you're not going through that cold season anymore. There's a period where everything is good in your life. Your relationships are maintained. Your money is decent. You know what I mean? Like everything is back to regular. And I want you to remember that everything, it always ends. The test always comes to an end. When you in that moment, it feels like it's forever. When you in that moment, it feels like it never stops. When you in that moment, it feels like nobody loves you, nobody understands you, nobody's here to support you. But remember when the clouds went away and the sun came out. And then you felt like your friends were your friends again, and your relationships with your people was the same again, and your money was right again, and your creations was right again, your ideas was right again. It was never true. It just felt real because at that moment you was in them trenches. You was in them trenches. You was really out there fighting for your life, trying to make it happen the best way you possibly can, but you came out of it. And I want you to try your best to always remember that you will always come out of it. So help me God, as long as you continue to wake up every single day and try, you're going to make it out of the darkness. You're going to find yourself back to the light. But I want you to not forget about everything it took for you to get here. Don't discount your history. Don't discount your past. Don't discount those memories, because those memories are what help you remember that you that nigga today. The enemy never comes with a new strategy, ever. When your mind is playing tricks on you and the pressure is closing in, it looks exactly the same every single time. So when you're going through another cold season, I want you to remember, this is exactly like it was the last cold season. Try your best to recognize the old tricks. Recognize the pattern, because they always show up in the same way. Remember how you survived the last season and how everything got better. You survived, and you will survive again, just like the last time. This time is no different. All you have to do is remember that this won't stop you. All you have to do is remember that this won't beat you. Just recognize the signs, recognize the patterns. Your faith is going to get tested. What is it that you want in this life? You want to take care of your family? You want to sell out Madison Square Garden one day? You want to have a clothing line that everybody recognizes, that everybody wears? You want to meet people that you admire and you respect? Your faith will be tested. Sometimes society is subconsciously interested in making sure you really want what you say you want. Do you really want financial freedom? Do you really want to break generational curses? Your faith is going to be tested on the road to that glory. The universe is going to come and test you and see just how bad you really want the shit you say that you want. And there are people who are going to get their faith tested and they're not going to make it. They're not going to make it because they believe that they couldn't do it. Because when the faith comes to test you, it's all about what you believe. The only way you lose the battle to getting what you want is if you believe that you can't have it. Because the people who do get it, they got it after they got knocked out. They got it after they got knocked down. They got it after they got... Because the people who do get it, they got knocked down, they got hurt, they got punched, They got manipulated. They was broke. They had people turn their back on them. But they survived all the bad days just to see themselves get to the good ones. And that's the difference between the people who win and the people who quit. Because the people who quit got hit a couple times and it was like, oh, this shit ain't for me. And then all that time you quitting, you go back home, you take a shower, you lick your wounds. And so what do? You chill. You pivot, you find something else to do with your time. And one of these days, you're gonna be scrolling through your phone, going through your Instagram, and you're gonna see them people who didn't quit. You're gonna see them people who got knocked the fuck down, bank account got empty, everybody turned their back on them, but they kept pushing. They took their break, they took their needed time because you gotta rest, but then they kept pushing. And what you're gonna see is one day they're gonna be celebrating in some type of way. And you're gonna realize, I should've kept pushing. You're gonna realize I should've never stopped, because everybody's faith get tested, but the people who win are the people who keep going. And so I want this podcast to be to those who really on their last little bit of energy. I want this to be for those people who really tired, the people who really feel like they isolated. I mean, like really. Because when you on this road and you trying to get something that ain't never been done, you gotta do something you ain't never done. Quoted from some basketball movie that I forgot with the nigga who looked like Nick Cannon. But I want you to know that as a person that's also going through that journey himself, I've been through plenty of days where I didn't know if it was really worth it. I've been through plenty of days where I didn't really know if I was really if I was investing my time in the best ways. And I questioned a lot. I questioned a lot of people, and most importantly, I questioned myself. And through it all, what I could tell you is that I just didn't stop. A lot of the time it didn't make sense, but I just didn't stop. And eventually I got exactly what I was looking for. And if I can do it, you can do it too. And I want you to have it, because if I can have it, you should too. I'm no different than you. I'm not better than you. Jay-Z said the most genius thing I ever did was not quit. And that man is a certified genius. If one of the most successful men in the world is telling you the most genius thing he did was not quit, then you just gotta not quit. And if you ever need to talk to somebody about it, come holler at me, man. Slide through my DMs and let's have a conversation. Let's hop on the phone, because we need each other. We only start to feel our weakest when we feel like we're alone and we isolated. But once we feel like we're a part of a community, the enemy can't trick us the same, man. The enemy can't convince us of those things that he used to convince us of, because now I got my brothers and my sisters with me. And yeah, man, so with that being said, I hope this podcast was good to you. Again, never quit, man. The faith is always being tested. The last time I was here, it was a whole different view, and it was way fucking better. And this one looks completely different, but you know what? I did it though. And that's all that really mattered to me. At the end of the day, it might not be perfect, but it is done. And I could be satisfied with that. And I got a good feeling about this one. The last time I came here, I didn't really have so much as a good feeling about it, but this time I do. And with that being said, I just want to tell you one more time, the enemy is going to come and test your faith in 3 ways every single time. You're going to feel like your back is up against the wall. You're going to feel like the answers are not clear. And you're always gonna feel like you're running out of time. But I wanna let you know that none of it is true. And with that being said, I gotta remind you, like I always do, something that we gotta say is that before I leave, I gotta let you know, whenever I'm working, I will remember that done is better than perfect. And if I'm satisfied with my work, then I'm living in my purpose. I love y'all, man. Thank you so much. Halfway up.